welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode about transitions in your procurement career. So there's a lot to delve into here. It's definitely something from a coaching perspective that I think normally we help people through transition moments. But what are your thoughts on this particular topic, Donna?
Yeah, we chose this topic because it's it's a recurring theme that a lot of the clients coming to us, they're coming to us because of some kind of change, transition, pivot, whether that's an internal, a mindset, or whether that's a kind of an external change. And yeah, it's a big part of the work that we're doing with our clients. So we thought it'd be really good to explore this further. And let's be honest, like when you look at our whole lifespan of our careers, like most of us will experience so many different transitions, pivots, moments of different direction, and it can be really difficult to navigate your way through that, and some of those we choose with intention, some of those we kind of fall into, and some of those happen to us quite suddenly. So yeah, I think just being equipped to be able to navigate your way through that with confidence can make a real difference, particularly in the world we're living in right now, which, let's be honest, it is an ever-evolving world full of change and pivots and, all things worrying sometimes and positive things at other moments in time. So, yeah, I think it's the ability to be able to successfully navigate change and transformation in your career can be an absolute game changer, particularly if you are, at leadership level or an aspiring leader, like, and in the world that we're living in right now, where there's an awful lot of this stuff happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you say about the differences in the changes and transition that we experience throughout our careers, right? None of us are immune to this sort of change. But I love what you say about how there's change that we choose if we choose to make another move in our career. And then there's change that happens to us. And our responses to that might be quite different depending on the scenario. So should we delve in a bit deeper to those two
Yeah.
different elements?
Yeah, absolutely. Should we start with the intentional changes? Is that
Sure.
so? Yeah, I mean, I guess there are loads of possible moments of change in our careers that we choose, and between us we see many of them on a daily basis. So whether it's moving up to a more senior role, changing categories, changing industries, changing organization, going from an organization that's quite established to suddenly like a startup or a very much a greenfield environment. Some of the time we're choosing to kind of enter into the unknown almost, and it's a choice, but it can be quite difficult sometimes to successfully kind of navigate those changes. What would you add in terms of like some of those kind of intentional changes? Any kind of obvious ones there that I'm kind of missing, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's some intentional changes when it comes to those changes that happen in our lives, right? I'm a parent, I've got two children, and I certainly remember after making those two transitions from being without children to then having my first and then having my second, that it impacted the way I showed up to my career in different ways because my roles were different between the two children, and also my home life had changed as well in terms of my husband's role impacts my role and the way that I can do mine with so which a lot of families have that challenge of working your professional lives around family life. And so when it comes to those intentional changes, while we're doing it through conscious choice, there's a lot of unknowns still when it comes to the impact that those choices have. Now, I've used a family example there, but obviously there's that could apply to many other things. So I think while we can be intentional, we still need to be very conscious about what our own responses and our own feelings and thoughts are around
Mm,
what that means for our careers, what that means for our lives.
yeah, 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 I would agree. And I think, again, we come back to this quite a lot, kind of giving yourself some space to actually think through that transition and that change. And if it's intentional, hopefully it's a really positive one, but it's just kind of giving yourself the space to think about, what is this going to potentially look like, and how can you prepare yourself so that you're ready, so that you're almost you've got some foresight over maybe where some of the biggest challenges might be, and so that you can be like intentional with your plan as to how you approach that situation. Quite a few of the examples we're talking about, maybe going into new roles, etc. But it's not necessarily about new roles. I think it's just just being quite considered about how you approach it in the before, like what are those things that you can do to set yourself up for success, and increase your speed of learning, etc., going into that new environment, but also um, having that mechanism for recognizing what is going well, isn't going well, where do you need extra help, support, what does that help and support potentially look like for you as well, and is that you helping yourself or asking others, or others internally, others externally. So yeah, I think there's quite a lot that you can do in advance of the transition, and also particularly, like, we hear a lot the first 90 days, like that first 90 days, whether it's in a new job or not, can be, that can be quite an important time, just for kind of paving the way of how things are going to pan out later down the
Mhm.
line as well. So it's just kind of almost, having some early foresight as to what that potentially could look like, but what the pitfalls might be, and actually how can you recognize the positives and be kind to yourself, and recognize the elements that are going well, but also be mindful of those areas where maybe there's still some improvement or growth required.
Yeah, I mean, definitely self-compassion is an absolute must during any transition that you're going
Mhm.
through, be that changes that you're choosing to go through and changes that happen to us. So, yeah, I think certainly there's a lot we could delve into that, but I think what's common between changes that we choose and changes that are done to us is that level of uncertainty and how we respond and knowing ourselves really well. Are you okay? Can we move on to the external and the changes that happen to us?
Yeah, of course.
In
Yeah, yeah.
so because I think that what you were saying there leads nicely on to, what about when something has happened to us in our career when we can set ourselves up as well as we can, but there are some changes that are not at our hands, right? And I'm referring particularly to restructures actually, because
Mm,
a lot of my clients and maybe yours as well have been through either redundancy or there's restructures. And restructures, we all hear the murmurings before they happen, news travels, and then it's that uncertainty that you feel and the anticipation that you feel beforehand. Then the change happens and you don't know, some people might think of this, oh, this might be an opportunity for me to leave
yeah,
or opportunity for something to change. But it brings about a lot of fear. So I think something around that to consider when changes happen to us, it's about taking a step back and also thinking about, okay, I can't control what's going to happen
yeah.
here, what I can control is how I support myself during this time. And I come back to that self-compassion piece because something that I think change can really create, whether it is consciously done or done to us, is it really shakes our sense of identity of who we are as people. And I spend a lot of my time in coaching sessions exploring the element of someone's identity versus what they do within their career
Mm,
and how we can separate and create some space between that. And so I think how we identify with these changes and what that means for our identities can really impact how well we handle and navigate those challenges. So
mm,
I'm gonna bring back to an example about the parenting element. So because no matter how dedicated you are to your career, and I say this for men and women, right? I know it can be different because of responsibilities that are placed on either role of parent, but I think there's definitely an element of I'm not the same person I was. And I'm
mm.
coming back to the same role. How do other people see me? What does that mean? So I just think there's definitely something around identity and how we can be compassionate to ourselves when it comes to that. I've drifted off a bit here. I'm sorry, because I was going back to the changes done to us, but identity is my main point really for both of those changes. It's being conscious that be proud to work in procurement, be proud that you're a procurement professional, but it doesn't define your entire identity of who you are. And that self-compassion is really important during change.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that self-compassion and kindness piece is it's so important. And I think it's particularly when that change has been done to us, um, it's it's actually quite easy, I think, to very quickly go into that downward spiral. And I've seen it with many individuals, and it's really understandable how it can happen. It's this thing has happened, it's come out of the blue, you're not prepared for it, you're not ready, you're not mentally equipped to kind of deal with it. And when you're in that moment, it can feel like just the lowest moment that for some people they've ever experienced. And sometimes there's then you kind of you kick into this like fight or flight type reaction. It's the panic that sets in, and you, you don't give yourself the space to stop and think and really be objective with how you then choose to move forward. And it's like, panic quickly, I need to do this. And it's not necessarily strategic kind of what you next do. It's scattergun. And because it's scattergun, it often then doesn't work. And because it doesn't work, that then quickly knocks your confidence. And maybe initially, like if it is a redundancy scenario, initially you start questioning the market, and very quickly you start questioning yourself. And so I think for me, that self-compassion is so many different things. It's be kind to yourself. Don't be focused on, looking for this new job for 12 hours a day, back to back. Give yourself like, chunks of time where you're doing it, but chunks of time doing things that you really enjoy out in the fresh air. Just, focus also on some positive things, and don't let being a job hunter be your new identity. And just so do those things that serve you well, like get good rest, exercise, all the basics that we know is really important, but we often like we don't think we can afford to go to the gym when really I need to be looking for a job. So it's like do those things that are going to help you, because keeping clarity is really important. But I'd just say as well, just keep sight of the positives, like you said, be proud of what you do in procurement, and know that's not your identity. But I'd say like just really bring to the forefront the positives in your career so far, and go into that next chapter really thinking about actually, like we know many people kind of experience a really, really difficult situation, and it's then followed by like the most amazing kind of chapter. And often, we're forced into suddenly thinking, who am I? What do I want to do? And actually, that's when we're suddenly open to new possibility and different opportunities. And sometimes what follows that dark time is like the best time and the best decision you've ever made. So I think it's just trying to keep a positive mindset, not toxically positive, but remind yourself, of the positive experiences you've had in your job, gain feedback, gain recommendations. Social proof in today's online world is massive. So actually, asking those people that have had really positive experiences to say nice things can be really helpful, yes, for the future employer, but also for your mindset as well. I see it all the time where, people are experiencing a different market and they start to question the market, and are there even the right jobs, and then it's, am I even good enough, and then it's, am I even doing the right thing? And very quickly these negative thoughts can kind of come in. So just try and have a way of reminding yourself of as many of those positives as possible, because you are really good at what you do, and you were really good at what you did only 2-3 months ago. That therefore means you are still really good at what you do and what you can bring. And yeah, I think a lot of the time, people, like, they're coming to me, this redundancy has happened to them, and these people, their careers have done that. This is driven individuals that have succeeded in their career, and then this restructure happens to them, and all of a sudden they're questioning, are my skills outdated? Should I be, they'll come to me and they're like, do I need to do like different qualifications? Or, do I need to like be doing AI courses or sustainability qualifications? Because I hear all the time that's the future. And obviously they are developing areas in procurement, but it doesn't mean you have to do those things. Like, your value still exists. You've had a month off, 2 months off, 6 months off, 9 months off. Like, you still have value to bring. So yeah, it's just trying to keep sight of that,
Yeah, no,
really.
all great points. And I think you say about, holding on to the positives, the past successes, the self-compassion, because this is about resourcing yourself when you're going through these transition moments, okay? And that looks different for everybody.
Mm,
My switch off thing is tennis. Like, watch, I can't play it for toffee, but I love to watch it. And
yeah.
and so that is the way that I switch off and recharge my batteries away from thinking about the business. So everybody's got those different things. What I would like to draw attention to, and when it goes through that change, there is that element of change fatigue, which we've
Mm,
not touched on yet, because sometimes it's a mixture of change that we choose and change that is done to us that we just get fed up of it. And
mm,
that there's a saying, is it that the only constant is change?
yeah.
And so it is important that we know exactly what our own default responses are when it comes to managing
Mm,
change. I remember doing a change curve when I was facilitating a workshop when I was in house. We were about to go, or we thought we were about to go through some restructures, and we all plotted where we were on that curve. And so many people felt were comfortable to share that they were in the valley of doom, like at the bottom part of the change. But it's recognizing that not that where everybody is on that change, so you can help each other through. So collectively,
mm,
if you're all going through it together, and we're talking usually on an individual basis, but it's relevant to a team as well. So recognizing where each other is, where each other are on the curve, and
mm,
helping each other through. But change fatigue is a real thing, and sometimes we just need to take a step back from it, is the best thing, I think. I would like to also, now obviously we're both coaches, right? We support people primarily through transition moments. Um, but there's just something I think that's really useful to know about coaching and about transition in general, about how we will continue to go through transitions in our lives. And you don't always have to have a coach or somebody to do each and every one with you. It's really useful to have an external viewpoint, because we
Mm,
all view change through a different lens. But I think something that I would be really keen to hammer home on transitions is that the more you take that time to understand how you respond
mm,
during change and transition, it will resource you for the future. And as coaches, we don't, our aim is not to have clients who are dependent on us all the time.
yeah,
We are there to resource our clients so that they can tackle future changes as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a really good point. So if there's anyone out there listening to this right now, that maybe has just recently had news of a change that's coming and it's happening to them, what advice would you give them, Laura, just in terms of maybe working their way through the coming weeks and months?
That's a great question. I think there's that element of, and I'm going to come back to that identity piece, that detachment. We can sometimes take change really personally.
Mm,
That especially if you are affected and not everybody is, and
yeah,
how. So it's so easy to fall into that spiral you were talking about earlier with identity. So that's the first thing, is to create some space, whatever that looks like for you,
yeah,
but recognizing that what is happening is not a reflection on you personally. You
yeah,
are still you. Like you said, you still have those skills. You still have that experience. Nobody can take your experience and your
yeah,
skills away from you. They're still there.
yeah,
Okay. So I think that's the first thing that I would emphasize, knowing that something is coming. Um, the second thing, oh, you've really put me on the spot. What other steps? Revenge from a previous episode. Um, I, I think the other thing is about, talking to someone, and it's not just a coach. Coaches are
yeah,
great for those moments, for transition moments, for pivots. Talking to someone you trust, and I think, especially when change is happening to us, a lot of people put their guard up because
mm,
they don't want to be seen to be vulnerable or to
mm,
be afraid. And sometimes, if you're going through something collectively, everybody's got their own vested interest in what's going on with that change. So, for example, you might have a really good relationship with your line manager, but your line manager might also be thinking, what does this mean for me? And
mm,
sometimes those perceptions get blurred, or
yeah,
we give advice that's well intentioned, but there's a personal motivation coming from that
yeah,
advice.
yeah,
So I think this is where external help,
yeah,
whatever that looks like, coaching, mentoring, friends, family, someone who you admire that you feel you could
yeah.
reach out to, I think that's really important, because judgment can be clouded when it's a collective change that's going on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really nice point. And yeah, I think transitions can be lonely, I would
Yeah,
say.
absolutely.
Um, you know, whether you're looking for a new job, you've been made redundant, you've got a restructure, which, you haven't lost your job, but your job is now different. Even like we've been through, we've both set up our own business. Like, actually, it can be lonely if you don't allow yourself to kind of open up to other people. And like you say, like sometimes you feel like you have to put that face on, I'm fine, yeah, no, I know it's all going to be fine, and you're internalizing it all. And I know myself, I was there, I was feeling stuck, and for whatever reason I chose not to communicate that to other people, and that really didn't help me at all, because then you're in your own head, and it's harder then to kind of move forward from that. So yeah, I guess from a personal standpoint, as someone that's been that person that kind of temporarily, fortunately, felt stuck, but also someone who has recently very much transitioned to set up my own business. Like, I now know that I will never make any major transition purely by myself. And I don't mean it's always engaging, a mentor or a coach, but now, like, I intentionally try and make sure that I've got some of the right types of people around me, so
Mhm.
that there is always someone that you can feel that you can share. Um, but it's about, I think, that the right person, because sometimes you can share the right thing with the wrong person, and actually it's the opposite of helpful actually sometimes. So I think it's also just, being quite careful about, who you're asking for advice from really as well.
Yeah, such a great point. I think particularly what you've said about the loneliness, and
Mm,
having gone through that transition as well, I've actually had that learning later on because I consider myself to be a very independent person.
yeah,
Like going it alone was not a fear for me. It's
yeah,
something I feel very used to. It was only later on in business when I was like, gosh, I'm taking on so much for myself
yeah.
here. I don't need to do that. So that has actually been a real unlearning for me about
Mm,
realizing that I don't have to do it on my own. And so I also sit here as a business owner thinking back over my career, like when have I done that before? And when should I have engaged help
mm,
at a different stage? Because things might have been quite different. And I say
yeah,
that without regret. It's just hindsight's a wonderful thing,
yeah.
isn't it? So, for anyone who's going through it now, take it from an independent person. It's always good to talk.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it can help you to make that first next step often much quicker. And
Yes.
often it can just take away the overwhelm of just not knowing, do I do this or this or this or this? And then it's kind of, you feel a bit scrambled, not knowing which way to go. So I think it can just be really helpful to kind of give you that confidence to make that decision about what that next step forward is going to be for you as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And like you say, the steps sometimes can be faster. So if we were to be thinking about recapping this episode then, what would you say your biggest highlights are in terms of navigating transition from this episode?
Think let's just all accept that change, transition, pivots, we're all going to experience a
Mm,
fair few of them probably throughout the course of our career. And some of them may be easier to navigate than others. But I guess it's, let's equips ourselves to be able to kind of cope with them, as positively as possible, and kind of, so that we can respond to them in a way that we're happy with, and in a way that's going to enable us to still keep moving forward. Like obviously you might have your period of grief and kind of frustration, but enable yourself to be able to move forward kind of positively. But I think in the world that we're living in right now, and let's be honest, probably for the foreseeable future, like you say, like the only thing, what was the phrase? We're not very good at remembering phrases. The
the
only
only
certainty
constant
is,
is change.
oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say the only certainty is uncertainty. Same
Yeah,
thing. I've made that one up. I'm
you've
going to
coined
take that
that
one.
one.
Yeah. But yeah, I think look, there's going to probably be more of it to come. Whether we like it, whether we choose it, whether it happens to us, it's going to happen. And so actually giving ourselves the skills to be able to kind of cope with it as well as possible, I think is really positive. And actually, like if you are a leader or an aspiring leader, that's actually a really it's a really valuable skill to have, to be able to, for yourself, but for your team and for for the business, be able to successfully navigate that change and transition, and that in itself as a skill will enable you to grow in your career.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're great points. Yeah, I think to add to that is just a recap on the identity piece, separating what's happening from who you are, and self-compassion.
Mm,
It's something that is vital when going through those sorts of changes.
definitely. Well, look, thanks everyone for tuning in again. Yeah, we're absolutely delighted with how many of you have been joining us on these episodes. So please keep listening, and yeah, we will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.